My name is Dan Rubin. I'm a naturopathic oncologist. So in the state of Arizona, I can now legally call myself an oncologist, which refers to specialty, because I have been board certified in naturopathic oncology. How many know that that certification actually exists? Okay, a couple people. So it didn't exist before 2004 when the whole process was invented. I think Dr. Ardette wanted me to come here to kind of tell you, because I've been engaged in the treatment of people with cancer, and that's it basically. I don't do anything else. I don't have a general practice. Our practice, as it began, is the embodiment of a specialty practice, and I believe in specialization in naturopathic medicine. There are a good number of people who don't. And there's an ongoing yet softening argument within the profession. But I believe it's high time for naturopaths to specialize and look at the success of the other medical professions that have, quote, come before us. And I say, quote, come before us because we know that we're rooted in deep histories long before traditional medicine came on board. But still, our profession is young and growing, and a good portion of our profession is still in school. But I believe that without specialization, we're not going to grow to the extent that we can. If we all remain family practice and all do the exact same thing, how are we going to differentiate which physician is going to be treating which patient? Not everybody here can know what to do with a person who comes and says, I have stage 4 renal cell carcinoma. I was just diagnosed. What should I do? I don't want to do conventional medicine. And what are you going to do? You can certainly, as a family practice physician or primary care physician in the state of Arizona, call upon your naturopathic principles, but will it be enough? Will you know what to do? Will you know that you may need to encourage this person and educate them towards the conventional route? Will you be able to discuss this with them? Probably not, and especially not your first year out. I would be surprised if you had the skill to do that, because I'm still gaining the skill, and I'm 14 years in naturopathic oncology, okay? And very involved in the whole context in our country and globally, I believe, in terms of kind of the trends, et cetera, and what's going on both in conventional and naturopathic medicine. So the point is why not have specialties? Okay, so I encourage you to move towards specialty. You look at Dr. Burrell, who has started the Pediatric Association of Naturopathic Physicians along with his other board members, and I believe he's acting president. I was founding president for 5 years of the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and it was the first basically of its kind in our profession, and we stood against a lot of spite, or a lot of grief, let's just say, that we were given from some of the other docs within the national context, that, oh, the contingencies to be able to sit for the test were too difficult. It was too stringent. And how can we, meet 85% patient load over the last 2 years of oncology patients if we live in a community where it's even hard to make a living just seeing any patients? My contention is, well, then you shouldn't be an oncologist, period, the end. Yet that didn't fly, and we had to knock it down to 55% over the last 2 years so we could get something going. So there's give and takes, but I'm telling you, I believe that naturopathic medicine should gain more specialties. I encourage you to go forward with them. I encourage you to start institutions within naturopathic medicine. I believe it, and I believe that that's how we're going to grow. Okay. That being said, I think, love for naturopathic oncology stems from my inherent desire to understand the complexities of physiology and biochemistry that we learn in year 1. And that when we put biochemistry land up on our walls, or when Dr. Waters puts his sigma charts up on the wall, and you look at the inborn errors of metabolism, or you look at the complex chemical pathways, guess what? The charts are already old by the time you get to your sophomore year, or probably by the time he even puts them on the wall, because there's more being looked at in the world of oncology. But that stuff really makes a difference. In fact, in oncology, we call upon what we learned in embryology. Why? Because pathology reports actually matter. So everything that we looked at from class to class is represented in oncology. We use it all the time. And it's important. And I think it's a way to continually appreciate the mystery and the beauty of the human body and all its workings, and be able to have a true underlying philosophy about the treatment of people with cancer. And so I'm speaking to you as a naturopathic oncologist, but a doctor first, a naturopathic second, a naturopathic doctor second. But it's important that, and I encourage you, with whatever part of naturopathic medicine you go into, even if it be without not in the context of seeing patients. If you go into industry, or if you go into journalism, or if you go into media, or whatever you do with your medical degree, I encourage you to leave this school and engage with the philosophy that you believe in and that you know and that you feel in your heart. Because there's no way, I think, that our practice would be successful if we didn't have a philosophy that we came to with every patient. And the philosophy is simple. It doesn't have to be a complex mission statement or vision statement, although we certainly have those for a business. But it's about what do you do every time that you sit down in front of your new patient. Okay? And what do you do every time that you sit down in front of your patient that is coming back to see you? A very important point. Somebody comes back to see you is a way to build your practice. And that means they appreciated what you told them. Don't underestimate a return visit. So when you sit down in front of your new patient and your return visit patient, my philosophy, because I'm an oncology doctor, is to make sure that I don't use the term cancer patient. Okay? I say the person with cancer. And our clinic says that. Because they are people first, and they are not their diagnoses, and we know that. They are not the embodiment of their diagnoses. They are people that may have some diagnosis that we need to treat them for, or complaint. But usually the person with cancer is going to have a pathological, histology-based pathology report that states what type of cancer it is, and we're going to launch from there, and it's important to have that. But that's, I think, the chief underlying philosophy, is to see the person first, and then the diagnosis second. And it's very empowering. Other types of kind of empowering notions are statements like, oh, you failed that chemotherapy, so, or they come to you and say, well, I failed this chemotherapy, so I'm on second-line therapy for my non-small cell lung cancer. Or, I failed, first of all, I failed radiation, and I failed surgery, and I failed chemotherapy, and I failed a molecular antagonist, and now I'm in a clinical trial. I'm on a phase 1 clinical trial, small molecule. We don't like to hear that. In our clinic, I think the drug failed them. Medicine wasn't there. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. But that is the context that your patients will come to you in, okay? That the drug failed them. So does that make them feel empowered, or does that make them feel like they failed? I failed chemotherapy. So if you just change the paradigm, and we're naturopaths, we have the capacity to do this. We have the philosophy. We have the teachings, the teachers. And so, and like I said, we start school with a philosophy. And none of you would be here if you didn't have a philosophy that took you to this school. And I'm betting that there's probably somebody, if not more in this class, who may have opted for naturopathic medical school instead of conventional medical school, DO or MD school, or perhaps nurse practitionership or something. And that they made a conscious choice to go naturopathic medicine. I never was one to really advertise conventionally. That doesn't mean you're not putting my name in the yellow pages. I wasn't throwing ads in the different magazines. I was advertising the knowledge and skill that we had by helping to teach doctors, because one of my goals was to be a doctor that teaches other doctors. Because to me, that's the way you can help many patients, not just one at a time. There's nothing wrong with that. But teaching in the school, which I did for some years, for many years, and teaching other physicians was, I thought, one of the best ways to reach my goals. Little did I know at the time, because this is back in 2002, 2003, but the real goal, which is very clear right now, was to deliver the word of naturopathic oncology to the global market. And that is what we're working on currently. How do we allow globally people diagnosed with cancer, or therefore wanting to prevent such, access to naturopathic oncology skills and principles? And that's what we're working on. It's part of the reason why we're filming today. Why? Why is it important for me to film and not wear that microphone? Well, one, you're quiet now and you can hear me. I'm projecting better. But two, I don't know. It seems like a good idea. Why not get what we say and talk about as much as we can with all our physicians and get this on tape? Because we're going to use it somehow. So there's a marketing plan right in front of you. And it's, we're certainly in the days of Web 2.0, so part of this will probably be on the internet. And certainly REA Mittman will edit this for us and make a nice marketing video. But I think it's important, if you have confidence in yourself, that when you go talk, record it somehow. I've been voice recording myself at various community support groups or where have you for years, putting them up on the website. It's just, you know, I'd say collect what you can, and even if you don't use it right away, because you'll want to use it at some time. It's a good idea. So we invested in video equipment. Thought it was important. And lo and behold, it is. This afternoon, as an example, I spoke at the Scottsdale Chamber Inspire Luncheon. It's a monthly meeting where women, business women get together in the community, and they bring a speaker in, and they learn about different things or products of the community. And I was part of a 7-person oncology panel. This was put together by a patient of mine who was asked to put together a program, and she opted, instead of having one speaker, to have people that really touched her lives as she has her journey through her diagnosis of cancer. She brought herself, her daughter, her best friend, people in the community that are touching people with cancer's lives, and she brought me because I'm her naturopathic doctor and she values what we do. Why? Because she has a diagnosis where it is not requiring definitive conventional oncology treatment at this time, and she's in what the conventionalists would call a watch and wait kind of hole, if you will. That's another one of those connotations, like I failed the chemotherapy. Watch and wait. What do you, I mean, in general, you're not waiting for it to go away, let's face it. You're waiting for it to get to the point where, based on the pathologic basis of disease, it's now treatable by conventional means, and that was not what she wanted, so she sought naturopathic oncology, and we're doing our stuff. And she's just happy. She's 1.5 years since diagnosis, and no conventional treatment needed so far. If you're not a natural networker, if you don't have the capacity to form relationships with other professionals well, you probably need that business plan differently than other people do. But I already had some type of status, if you will, not from an egotistical perspective, from a factual perspective. I had status. People would refer to me. I was doing oncology work. I was already known as like the cancer guy with certain doctors. And when, I mean, heck, one of my first patients that I saw when we first got our office, our small office, 795 square feet, less than 800 square feet, with 0 employees. I was it. I did everything. I answered the phones, I ordered the supplements, I started the IVs, I discontinued the IVs. I checked the people out, I sent out the mailings, I did everything, right? I could barely afford the computer. I remember the first computer that I got, I bought off my friend who owns a skateboard company. My first laptop, ran our business off that, and one day it just, and I like scrambled to get the money that we needed, and I ran to Circuit City, which was around at the time, and bought a better computer, and then we ran our business off that. I mean, the good memories in terms of building. But the point is from a networking perspective, I remember one of the first referrals, I remember the person exactly, was from a local chiropractor who I met when we were touring the birthing facility at Scottsdale Healthcare Osborne. I just met him that day and we formed a relationship, and he referred us one of our first patients. So it's about, to some extent, your personality and your ability to actually network and to have people drawn to you to want to refer to you. But you need to have a reason for people to refer to you. So in my niche, we had one. I was demonstrating expertise at the time in naturopathic oncology. Although the term hadn't been invented or adopted yet, it was what I was doing. So I had a reason for people to refer to me. I had been doing vaccine therapy. I went to AANP starting in 2001. That was about 4 years after my graduation. And I was talking at AANP, American Association of Naturopathic Physicians, for those of you who don't know but should know, and should be members. And you should be members of Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians if you're not student members yet, because it's not expensive and it's a lot of knowledge for you. Anyhow, point being is that's an important point. If you want referrals from people, you got to have a reason for them to refer to you. There's a lot of family practice docs out there, and we need them, okay? And a point that I actually left, but we need to get back to, just to kind of jump around a little bit, is that because I believe in specialization, I don't practice family medicine. I send my patients back to the referring physicians when they're especially if, well, no, I've sent them back anytime, but if they're naturopaths, some doctors, some naturopathic doctors say, you handle it. I don't really feel comfortable in the world of oncology, you handle it. But I really believe that if they refer to me, they need to go back for everything else that I don't know how to do, and that they sought that doctor out initially for. So one very important point is if somebody refers to you, send them a letter. I could say that this profession stinks. We're terrible as a profession at communication and sending letters. I know of 0 naturopathic doctors that I refer to that actually send me a letter. I just got contacted by another naturopathic oncologist who was saying, it was really nice, he was reaching out for help, saying, I know you send oncologist letters, or you're really good at sending letters to doctors when they refer to you. Guess what? There's another reason to refer to me or to send another patient back, because I just communicated with them. It doesn't have to be a complex letter, but it's courtesy. And I don't get that ever back to me, even when I ask. It's rare for me to get, maybe we'll get some handwritten notes. I will tell you, piece of advice, somebody refers, send them a letter. I am not a doctor that sends a letter out when I refer a patient, but I can tell you, the doctors that do send me a little bit of a letter as they're referring a patient, it's greatly appreciated by the specialist to give them a little bit of an update. But I always send a letter of what I want to do back. Sometimes the narrative is longer. You don't always, my philosophy is, you don't have to reiterate the case. They already know the case. They know what the diagnosis is, but they want to see what your interpretation is. And generally, what I've learned is that when an MD refers to me, a medical oncologist or radiation oncologist, and we're about 35% referral from medical and radiation oncology. That's how we gain about 35% of our new patients at any given time. I send them a, dear Dr. So-and-so, thank you for this. You know, you already know the diagnosis. They're already chiefing the case. They don't need me to reiterate all the scans and stuff. They're not going to read it. Don't waste their time or your time. Send them what you did. And if you want to include references or the whys of what you did, include it. If not, just send them what you did. That's what they want to know. They want to know what they're on and what and why you're doing it. Any doctor wants to know that. Okay. So that's an important point. It's one thing to do your networking and your marketing and to get yourself out there, but that gets you new patients. But what's as important is to make sure that you take care of the patients you already have, because you can't build a practice only on new patients. It doesn't work. At least I don't think it works. And I'd love to know how you could, because it wouldn't be something that I would want to do unless you have a practice behind you that sees all the follow-ups. But you're going to build your practice on good quality care, attentiveness to the patient. Look at our website. Our URL is www.listenandcare.com. Pick URLs that say something. There are often people who say www.drso-and-so. I don't have a drdanrubin.com. We have Listen and Care, which shouts what our precepts are. That's attractive to people. I'm not saying don't pick a URL that's your doctor name because it markets you, but it depends. Do you want to market you, or do you want to market something bigger than yourself? I choose to market something bigger than myself. And if you don't have somebody helping you and a staff managing your patients, they're not going to be satisfied, they're not going to refer patients, and they're not going to come back. And now I give you Rachel Verlander.
I'm going to touch on some of the stuff that Dr. Rubin covered when it comes to some foundational things, but more of what I'm going to talk about is just the day-to-day things. You know, not everybody here is going to graduate and have a full practice where they're suddenly going to need an office manager. But this is still information that you're going to utilize down the road. It's going to help you as you work towards those steps to know how you want that practice to run when it gets to that point. So this is more of, instead of, you know, foundations and philosophies, a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of how a practice operates. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt me. One of the things that, as Dr. Rubin touched on, he is very much a proponent of is not the typical marketing, not billboards, not magazine press, not commercials on television. Really building relationships, and how those relationships may take a little more time to build a practice than a huge television promotion program does. It typically pays off better in the long run, because those are people that are going to be with you for your entire practice, not just a short period of time based on some quick message. But once you have those patients, what kind of things do you need to do in order to keep them? So you're not constantly spending money on marketing materials or whatever your other choice for marketing your practice is. Patient retention, I think, is a huge key, and there are certain things that in the 4 years that Dr. Rubin and I have been together that we have noticed are patterns that help in patient retention. One of those is, especially as a new doctor, I've noticed as we've had new grads that started at the practice, they're very passionate about what they do. They're very empowered by the fact that they suddenly have a license to finally put into practice the skills and the wisdom that they've spent years and $18,000 to finally achieve. And so the patient comes in and they say, I have these 12 problems. And a doctor that feels empowered and passionate about what they do wants to solve all 12 problems. The problem with that is that the patient can at times then leave feeling overwhelmed. They feel like this is too much information, I don't know where to focus, and they may be hesitant to come back because they feel like this is too big of a picture. So sometimes scaling it down, not covering everything at the very first appointment is very important. And you may feel like at the moment I'm not helping the patient, but if they only have a few small goals and they see progress in those goals, they're going to come back and trust you to fix the next one. In that, clearly stating when and why you want to see the patient again. When do you want them to come back? Do a written treatment plan that says, return to clinic 2 to 3 weeks. Tell them why they're supposed to come back in 2 to 3 weeks. Need to follow up on lab results. Need to see if X supplement is working for X problem. So they know clearly in mind what the next step is, and they can track that progress just like you would. It also helps to train your front desk to do the same thing. At our office, we try to make sure no matter what the treatment plan says, and with Dr. Rubin's treatment plans being oncology, some of them are very involved. And so before you get into that process of explaining every supplement, explaining what labs need to be ordered, get them scheduled. Schedule them first before they leave the office. Otherwise, they get overwhelmed by everything else that's being talked about, and they'll say, I'll just call you. So instead of the overwhelming discussion, get them scheduled first. And then you know that piece is taken care of. If they don't schedule, have a backup plan. We have what's called a ticker system. That's what we call it. It's just a calendar in Outlook. If a patient leaves without scheduling or calls and cancels and doesn't reschedule right at that moment, they're placed on the ticker, which means that somebody gives them a call in X amount of days or weeks and checks in with them. So that just helps your patient retention and you're not losing people through the cracks. The other thing, touching on new doctors, is don't give yourself away. I understand your passion for what you're doing, but recognize that the investment that you've made and the knowledge you have, don't be afraid to expect people to pay you for that information. It's just the way life works. Sometimes this can be done in hallway medicine. You're walking out with the patient, you think you've covered everything and wrapped things up. As you're walking them to the front desk, they say, oh, by the way, I wanted to talk to you about, and you end up discussing it right there. Or emails nowadays is a very common way to find yourself spending loads of time on assisting your patients, which you want to do, but you're not getting reimbursed for that investment. So have an email policy. Don't be afraid to enforce it. Train yourself and train your staff on when a question is beyond a quick answer. If the staff knows, so-and-so called in with such and such question, instead of chasing you down for the answer, the staff can quickly say, that's a really good question. Let's get some time on the schedule so you can get a thorough answer. So don't be afraid to make sure that you're compensated for the time that you invest. If you have charity, feed your soul, if you're one of those people, because everybody naturally handles those things a little differently. Some people love to give, and that's very important. It's going to keep you going through the next day. There are many charities that touch your heart that you can get involved in, such as for the elderly, for oncology and specialties, children. Make sure that that's the area that feeds your soul when it comes to giving, and don't get trapped doing that through your private practice. Dr. Rubin talked a lot about building a referral network, and he already talked about writing letters to doctors that refer. So that was one of the things I was going to touch on. You can also look for a doctor that you share a patient with based on records, and don't be afraid to send that doctor just an introduction letter, even if they didn't refer to you. Say, hey, we share a mutual patient. I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. And that way they know who you are. If they get records that have your name on it because you ordered some lab tests, they're not going, who the heck are they? This person. So, and it just gives you an opportunity to explain what you do and why that patient came to you for some advice. Also, you can keep track of referrals from existing patients. We have this set up in our office where they get a thank you with a little gift certificate just for inter-office referrals when a patient refers a patient. So keep track of those, and then you'll also encourage that patient to keep talking to you about their friends and family as well. Quality support staff. Before you get to the point where you have to hire a front desk person, and you're thinking about that process, start keeping track of the things that are most important to you. What kind of things do you want to make sure that person represents in you? So when you get to the point that you do hire your first employee, you know exactly what you're looking for, and it's going to be easier for you to pass on the information that you have in your mind to that person so that they represent you well. And remember that your staff, once you do have them, interacts with your patients probably as much, if not more, than you do. So make sure that they are trained well. Make sure you know that they represent, beyond a shadow of a doubt, everything that you stand for. Educate them, spend time with them, take time to answer their questions. I think all of us have probably been in a situation where we've known a doctor that we've loved, hate their staff. I would totally go back to that doctor, but their staff sucks, and I don't want to deal with that front desk person's attitude. You do not want that to be what turns your patients away. So make sure that you train them well, too, so that they can answer questions intelligently and honestly, and they represent you to the best of their ability. I think that was key with Dr. Rubin doing oncology. There's a huge learning curve. But you want to be able to make sure that those people answer questions well. Of course, you know, there's a line there. They can't prescribe or recommend things or anything like that, so they have to know their boundaries, but at least they can represent you well, know how to draw that person in, make sure they're not getting just a few answers and then call in the next place. The biggest thing, I think, is being a person of integrity. I think Dr. Rubin is definitely a person that has integrity, and it's not just in his practice. So if you are a person of integrity, then it will lead to trust amongst fellow doctors, which is going to build your reputation, and it's going to build that referral source. And integrity with your patients also leads to trust. It leads to them coming back to you. It leads to them looking to you when they need a specialist or need to see a different kind of doctor, which then builds those relationships. Having integrity with your staff means that they will build genuine respect for you. So when they answer questions on your behalf, then they will do so with an expression of genuine trust for who you are. And that's going to be communicated to the people that are inquiring about you. So I think integrity in everything you do and how you approach every facet of your life, but especially in medicine, is only going to build your reputation in your practice.